Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for attending tonight's webinar, Financing Your MBA Education with SoFi. Tonight's presenter is Walter Balmas. He's the Vice President at SoFi Lending Corp. Walter Balmas has over 20 years of experience in student loan program management, having most recently created student loan programs for a dozen nonprofit credit unions. Prior to this, Mr. Balmas was Senior Vice President of Origination at MRU, which stands for MyRichUncle. His career includes stints as the Director of Loan Operations at All Student Loan Corporation, ALLSLC, and once the largest nonprofit student loan issuer in California. Mr. Balmas has a BA from the University of Southern California. So with that, I would like to pass it off to Walter.
Thank you, Message, and hello, everybody. Good afternoon from Los Angeles, and hopefully this is something useful to you folks. Again, my name is Walter Balmas, and as Message noted, I've been around for a while, and I actually started off as a financial aid administrator at the University of Southern California. So hopefully I'm able to impart some of my knowledge and experience out there to help you work through some financing questions. So first of all, I'd like to give you an idea of what MBA programs are costing these days. And this chart that you see here is effectively something that a website called Points and Quants compiled that shows you what a 2-year program costs. And what this shows effectively is a good chunk of students out there in MBA programs are getting some type of financial aid. And I want to expound on that a bit because it's really important to understand what financial aid is in terms of what you're getting as a graduate student. Because if you look at what the cost of an MBA program is, if you factor in the opportunity cost, this slide shows you, for example, if you factor in the opportunity cost of actually leaving your job to attend graduate school. At 8 schools in the United States, the cost of an MBA is over $250,000. So it's really important to understand what your options are. And hopefully your takeaway from this session is that I shine some daylight on the financial aid process and highlight the differences between, for example, what a federal loan is and a private loan is, and how social finance, or SoFi, offers a unique product that offers the best of both worlds. And hopefully you will agree with that perspective. What is a financial aid package? This is my own definition here. It is an aggregation of free and or low-cost financing options offered to you by the Financial Aid Office, and it is determined by a federally regulated need analysis formula, and it's based on data you provide in the free application for federal student aid. It is always recommended that you start your hunt for financing by completing the FAFSA. I know some of you already have gone through the FAFSA process, and are probably disappointed because you didn't get much. However, I look at the FAFSA as a ticket to resources and low-cost financing options out there. Without it, you will not have access to those financing options. The analogy I like to bring up is really it's like Disneyland. If you want to take advantage of any of the rides in Disneyland, you have to buy a ticket. So whether you are a fan of Space Mountain or the Matterhorn, you still need to buy a ticket to get into it. By that analogy, whether you're looking for financing from a private foundation or seeking to bypass the federal government altogether, most entities out there that offer free or low-cost financing will ask you if you have completed the FAFSA. So my recommendation to this audience, even if you don't take advantage of some of the low-cost financing options from the federal government, please do fill out the FAFSA because you might be surprised at what you're eligible for. What is in a financial aid package for most MBA students? Well, as some of you already know, your financial aid package is composed of loans, scholarships, and grants. Scholarships are basically merit-based. They're usually offered by private foundations, some municipalities, and in most cases, individuals. It's effectively free money. It's very competitive to get it, and if you're offered one, take it. The next area is grants. They are primarily need-based. Some are work-based, and even some are merit-based. Again, they're primarily from governmental entities, foundations, and individuals. A lot of them are income contingent. You have to meet a certain income threshold or cutoff. But again, if you're offered one, my recommendation is again that you take it. And finally, loans. There are primarily 4 different types of loans that you will see in your financial aid package. For the Federal Perkins, the direct unsubsidized loan, the Graduate Plus, and perhaps you might see a private education loan. These are primarily from the Department of Education via the U.S. Treasury and some private lenders. Of course, this is not free money at all. If you're offered one, shop carefully and compare. Let's compare loans against what SoFi has to offer. As you can see, immediately you notice that the cheapest loan out there is a government loan. But surprisingly, it is not the direct unsubsidized or the Graduate Plus. It is the Federal Perkins. The Federal Perkins is a need-based loan that is offered to graduate students at 5% fixed. You can borrow up to $8,000 a year with a maximum of $60,000 over the course of your studies. How do you qualify for a Federal Perkins loan? Well, your financial aid office will put it in your package if you're eligible. This goes back to our conversation about the FAFSA. If the data from the FAFSA tells the financial aid office that you're eligible for a Federal Perkins loan, that will show up in your financial aid package. Another component that your financial package would probably have is a Federal Direct Unsubsidized Loan. You've got a federal loan again with a 6.80 fixed, a 1% origination fee. You will also have eligibility for a Federal Direct Graduate Plus. And as most of you are already familiar, it's probably the most costliest component of your financial aid package in the current interest rate environment. You've got a 7.90 fixed with a 4% fee. Compare that to what SoFi has to offer, where we have a 6.49% fixed loan. What I wanted to do next was to highlight the difference between federal and private loans. And the tool I use is something that I retrieved from the U.S. Department of Education's website. The Federal Student Aid Office of the U.S. Department of Education has a neat chart available through that link on the very top of my presentation that basically goes through the differences between federal and private student loans. And I thought it might be interesting to actually superimpose what SoFi has to offer vis-a-vis those two programs, those two comparisons. So for example, according to this website, under federal student loans, you will not have to start repaying your federal student loans until you graduate, leave school, or change your enrollment status to less than half-time. And about private student loans, it says, many private student loans require payments while you are still in school. Well, SoFi offers the following repayment options while in school. We do allow you to defer, and if you defer, you are not penalized in any way or form. However, if you choose to do interest-only payments, we do reward you with an interest rate reduction that will result in a 6.24% interest rate. Again, also remember that unlike most programs, whether federal or private, upon graduating and entering repayment, we do give you an additional benefit, a 0.5% reduction that ultimately results in an interest rate of 5.99%. So from that comparative analysis, SoFi again straddles an interesting bridge between the two programs. For federal student loans, according to the Department of Education, the interest rate is fixed and is often lower than private loans and much lower than some credit card interest rates. Okay, well, that's true for the most part. However, for most of you, you will note that we have a very interesting interest rate environment right now. And depending on which economist you follow, that interest rate environment will stay with us for quite some time. So, surprisingly, whether SoFi or some other private student loan lender, there are a number of very low-cost private student loans out there. SoFi offers a fixed interest rate too. Again, if you fully defer, it's at 6.49%. And if you choose to repay, you get these additional discounts that you see on screen. All right, now here's another difference that's probably irrelevant to this audience. Undergraduate students with financial need will likely qualify for a subsidized loan, and that simply means the government pays the interest while you're in school. Well, that went away for graduate students, as most of you know. The subsidized student loan is a thing of the past, at least for the graduate student population. And as far as interest accruing, whether you take out a federal direct unsubsidized loan at 6.8, or a Graduate Plus at 7.9, or a SoFi private loan at 6.49, you are responsible for paying the interest. Let's talk about credit. According again to the federal government website, you don't need to get a credit check for most federal student loans except for the Graduate Plus loan, and that is true. Federal student loans can help you establish a good credit record, and that is true. However, notice that SoFi's underwriting criteria is very simple. All you have to be is attending an eligible institution and program, you're a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, and you have no adverse credit. It is very likely that we will grant you a loan. In fact, the same criteria that is used for Graduate Plus credit checks applies to SoFi. SoFi does not practice tier-based pricing. We have one rate. Whether you have average, good, or excellent credit, you get one fixed rate. Now, as far as credit is concerned, I find it a little simplistic to just talk about credit without talking about what affects credit. Well, good repayment behavior across all your debts, your credit longevity, and how you utilize credit, and the types of debt you are in, are the true determinants of your credit record. You won't need a cosigner to get a federal student loan in most cases, and that is true. And for some private student loans, you may need a cosigner. A cosigned private student loan, at least with our competitors, is pretty popular. However, with SoFi, we don't require a cosigner. If you pass our eligibility criteria, we give you the loan. Otherwise, you are simply declined. Now let's talk about tax deductibility. Interest may be tax deductible for federal student loans, and according to the same website, interest may not be tax deductible for private student loans. Well, for SoFi, our private loans meets the IRS definition of a student loan. Your ability to deduct your student loan interest is dependent on certain income thresholds. Again, as far as the IRS is concerned, our student loan meets their definition, and we believe they are tax deductible. But at the very end of the day, consult your tax advisor, as they are best equipped to counsel you on your particular situation. Another difference between federal and private, according to this website, is loans can be consolidated into a direct consolidation loan, while private student loans cannot. Well, that is true. SoFi borrowers, however, are eligible to refinance all their student loans they took out while at school under the SoFi Refi private consolidation product. So once you graduate, and if you decide to come to us for refinancing, we will consolidate any student loan that you have out there that you took out from us or any other private lender, including federal student loans, and we will help you consolidate them. Our current Refi private consolidation loan product has a fixed rate of 6.24%, and if you give us the privilege of deducting your monthly payment via autopay, that is reduced to a fixed rate of 5.99%. Let's talk about trouble repaying your loan. If you are having trouble repaying your loan, you may be able to temporarily postpone or lower your payments. And for private loans, they may not offer forbearance or deferment options. Okay? For the most part, the statement is very true. Sorry, I just lost power here. Anyway. Now, SoFi offers deferment and forbearance options aligned with most of the conditions the government issues such deferments and forbearances. While we don't have as extensive and as broad a category of deferments and forbearances that are available to the federal government, remember they've been at this for quite some time, we will work with our borrowers who experience temporary financial hardship because, frankly speaking, we want to help you pay it back. Repayment plans. Again, there are several repayment plans available to the federal government, including an option to tie your monthly payment to your income. And for private student loans, you might not have a lot of those options. Now for us, what we did do is align ourselves with some of those options. Not all of them, and let's be frank here, the government does offer a tremendous array of repayment options. And if this is a factor in your decision to look for financing, then please exhaust all your options in reviewing what the government has to offer. However, what we try to do is accommodate some of the features we believe would be useful for our borrowers. For example, graduated repayment. We offer graduated repayment following the same federal guidelines that the Department of Education applies as far as borrowers in the direct loan program. We also offer income-based repayment, one of the unique things about our product, and that income-based repayment is aligned with what the federal government offers. For example, to qualify, you have to meet something called the personal hardship test that is defined by federal regulations. If you meet that test, we will accommodate an income-based repayment scenario. There are no prepayment penalties in federal student loans. Very true. And some private student loans do have prepayment penalties. SoFi, on the other hand, we do not have a prepayment penalty. If you are on a 15-year term and you decide to double up your payments and pay it off in 7.5 years, go right ahead. There are no prepayment penalties. You may be eligible to have some portion of your loans forgiven if you work in public service. And again, the government says it is unlikely that your private loan provider will offer a loan forgiveness program. Well, SoFi loans do not qualify for the government-sponsored loan forgiveness programs, and we will not attempt to at any point in our program. However, we do offer something unique, something that could probably result in bigger opportunities for our borrower base. We call it the Community-Based Loan Forgiveness Program, where borrowers can make their case to the alumni and borrower community for such dispensation. Still a concept, we're still executing on it, but we believe community-based forgiveness is probably going to be bigger and much more flexible than some of the very standard loan forgiveness programs that the government has to offer. Finally, as far as seeking assistance from the federal government versus private student loan programs, free help is always available through the Fed sites at 1-800-4-FED-8. So anytime you have a question about a federal student loan or the FAFSA, that number is manned all the time with very knowledgeable folks. I've used it myself. And if you need information about federal student loans, please call that number. For private student loans, if you have any concern about your private student loan provider, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has an actual ombudsman. And they will be able to intervene in any situation you have with a private student loan lender. For us, if you want to talk to us, please call us at 866-357-6342. Social finance is a different kind of loan, and as those previous slides should have shown you, and I hope they did, we again sit in both worlds. We try to take the best of both worlds and come up with a product that hopefully you find very attractive as an alternative as far as financing your MBA education. It is based on a dedicated lending pool put together by alumni and students. And what we believe is so compelling about our argument is that alumni invest in us not only for the return, but because their funds are only used to make loans to students at their alma mater. The social argument behind all this is that at some point, our alumni and students will connect, and there will be opportunities that benefit both parties, whether it be networking, whether it be your next job, or whether it be just pure mentorship. Let's take one more look at these comparisons. For those of you who are price sensitive, the decision is probably easy. For those of you who want to measure your decisions in terms of, do I really want to give up some of the entitlement benefits that come with the federal programs? Well, that is your decision to make. We all dance to a different drummer, and hopefully, if your decision is to make sure that you get the best case to financing, the best priced financing, that you will come to us. But then again, there are those who really believe those entitled programs will benefit them and are willing to pay the extra cost for them. So, one more review. This is our program, and now I will open up the forum to questions.
Great. Thank you so much. This actually was very informative and makes me want to go to a graduate school and actually get a loan as well with SoFi. But actually, before I open up to the audio, we actually do have a question from John. The question was, do you need a credit check for a parent to co-sign a PLUS loan?
We don't have a, okay, so for a federal PLUS loan, okay, so the question I think is a parent applying for a federal PLUS loan. So a parent applying for a federal PLUS loan will need to go through a credit check. And if the parent is declined initially under the federal programs, you are requested to seek an additional endorser. So hopefully that is the flavor. Hopefully that answers that question.
So we have questions from David. He says, I am a second-year MBA student at Columbia Business School. Can I get student loans without a cosigner?
So the question is, I'm a second-year student at Columbia. Do I need a credit check to get a SoFi student loan?
Yes.
Well, we do perform a credit check.
And he also is an international student as well. Sorry, he just mentioned that as well.
Oh, I see. We currently don't lend to international students because there was a special pool for that, and that pool is exhausted. However, you know, the credit check question is a good one. Yes, you have to pass our credit test, but it's a very simple one. You know, I mean, all I do is look for no adverse trade lines, and that you meet my credit score threshold. And if you meet those requirements, then you're good to go. We currently don't take cosigners, so the test is simple. You pass it or you fail it.
Great. Thank you. And I promise from now on things will be much quieter. We have a question from Christine. Can you consolidate undergraduate debt into graduate debt?
Well, under our programs, as long as you meet the eligible institution and program requirements. So if you are attending one of our eligible schools or have graduated from our eligible schools, let's take, for example, you just graduated. You're an MBA student. You just finished Northwestern. And you want to consolidate all your debts, all your student loan debts. And you finished your undergraduate degree, say, at University of Chicago. Because you are attending an eligible institution, i.e. Northwestern, you would be able to consolidate all of your loans, even the ones from the University of Chicago.
Perfect. Perfect.
Hopefully that answers your question.
Great, great. And we actually have a question from Ellen. How do you pull the loans? Is it like a hedge fund? What happens if people default and you guys don't have enough money to keep funding me?
Well, it is, it is effectively, think of it as an investment product that is sold to the alumni. And the resources of the investment product is then used to loan students the money, right? So we have the ability to leverage alumni funds so that we can create pools that fund more and more loans from that alma mater. There's probably a lot more sophistication to how we do this, and I'm not the expert in those matters, but we have enough, we believe, to loan out to as many students as we can. We believe we could loan out hundreds of millions of dollars effectively through our model.
Great, great. I hope that answers Ellen's question. And definitely, if you have questions for Walter, please bring them in. Anything that you can think of will definitely be helpful.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to mention, and this just occurred to me, is that a lot of students ask me, federal student loans have something that is called a dischargeability provision. If the consumer dies or is permanently or totally disabled, a federal student loan is forgiven. We do the same. So if you have a SoFi private student loan, and God forbid you become permanently or totally disabled, or you die, effectively that loan will not go over to your estate. It basically is forgiven.
Gotcha. That's good to know, definitely. We actually have a follow-up question from Ellen. So the question is so is it a new pool each year or one pool that continues? And the reason why is that Ellen's a little bit nervous, and that the money from his pool, quote unquote,
right,
or her pool, will run out, and investors won't want to invest in my pool.
I see. That's a good question. I mean, the pool is of course finite. In any situation, whether you go to a bank or some other lender, there's no guarantee that that lender will have the funds to continue lending to you over the next 3 or 4 years. I mean, that's sort of par for the course. However, we believe that our model is self-sustaining and powerful enough that we can raise the necessary alumni investments to continue lending at the rate we are. Now, again, keep in mind that whether it be a big bank or your small credit union, the decision to continue lending could change from year to year.
Got it. And also the follow-up question to that is, but do you know if it's one pool that keeps growing, or are there multiple types of pools?
Well, there's that. It's not my expertise to talk about, so I will defer on answering that question.
Gotcha. No problem. So we have a question from Christine, and Ellen thanks you as well. So thank you for giving the answer. A question from Christine. do you cap your loans with the school's calculated cost of living?
Yes, that's a good question. You know, each institution has what is called a cost of attendance. And so every academic year, and some of you are already familiar with this, every academic year your institution calculates your cost of attendance. And that cost of attendance is an aggregation of indirect and direct costs, right? Indirect being, you know, your rent, your food, your books, and direct costs being your tuition. And so that together compose the cost of attendance, and we have to fit within that cost of attendance. So for example, you know, if your cost of attendance is $50,000 and you took out the maximum unsubsidized student loan of $20,500, I can only fund the difference between that cost of attendance of $50,000 and the $20,500 you already received on your unsubsidized student loan. However, the argument is, if you believe that your cost of attendance as summarized by your institution is too small, and you know, I've had families who have told me that, you know what, my school gave me a cost of attendance that does not take into consideration that I have to commute to my classes. I had one student who was a combined JD MBA at 2 different institutions. It was a partnership institutions. And his cost of attendance did not reflect the fact that he had to hop on a Southwest flight every weekend to go to class. And so think of the cost of attendance as just an average. If you believe that you have a higher cost of attendance due to some unique situation you have, and you can document that, you could actually appeal to the financial aid office and ask them to exercise their professional judgment to increase your cost of attendance to accommodate perhaps higher borrowing on your part to address your expenses. So hopefully that answers the question.
Great, great. So actually we have a question as well from Artie. I love the concept of SoFi, but have already taken a federal loan plus loan. Is there any way I can give it back and take a loan from SoFi?
Well, your federal loan has what I call a 120-day, no harm, no foul return policy, right? So once your student loan is dispersed, your federal student loan is dispersed, if you look at your direct loan master promissory note, the one you electronically signed with the government, you will see a return clause. That means at any time between the day your federal loan was dispersed and 120 days on, you have the right to cancel your loan at no cost to you. Now, you will probably want to check with your financial aid office on what the best way to do that is. Some folks will actually just instruct the bursar's office to return the funds. Some folks will go to their financial aid office and say, could you just effect the return? But as a consumer, you have a right to cancel your federal loan within 120 days of its disbursement.
Gotcha, gotcha. So that's definitely good to know. Actually, Ellen asked, does SoFi do the same thing, 120-day return policy?
We have a 30-day return policy. So effectively, if we disperse your loan, you have 30 days to return it. No questions asked.
Gotcha, gotcha. Thank you. And Christine asks, what is the timeline for issuing loans compared to the start date of classes?
Well, your eligibility, for example, for student loans is effectively good for your academic year. So if you don't need it now, as long as your academic year hasn't expired, you are eligible for that loan. So whether it be federal or private, if you don't need it now, but you believe you will need it in the spring, and your academic year as defined by your financial aid package has not expired, that eligibility remains. Whether you decide to take out more unsubsidized or whether you decide to take out a SoFi private student loan, as long as you are within your academic year, you are eligible for those products.
Gotcha. And actually, Christine followed up saying to cover move-in costs prior to classes starting. So that's what she followed up with.
Well, move-in costs, again, your cost of attendance factors in such costs. Again, this is an average for the cohort of students at your school. If you believe your move-in costs were extraordinary and more than what the school has determined to be the average move-in cost at your institution, then you have a right to go into the financial aid office, document those costs, and have them increase your cost of attendance so that you can seek financing that covers that cost.
Great,
It all
great.
boils down to documenting it. And if you can document that your costs are extraordinary, more than the average person, let's say, who was also moving in, for example, you had to travel a lot, you were an out-of-state resident coming into the state, then most financial aid office will give you dispensation in terms of increasing your cost of attendance so that you can seek financing to cover those costs you've already incurred. Financial aid offices have a tool called professional judgment. They are at liberty to exercise that in any situation where the documentation warrants increasing that cost of attendance.
Gotcha, gotcha. Actually, Christine also followed up. I've seen some loans not distributed until later in the school's quarter. Does that usually happen?
Run that question by me again.
Sorry, it says Christine followed up with, I've seen some loans not distributed until later in the school's quarter.
Yes, because that typically happens when most student loans have what you call a disbursement schedule set by the school. So if you're attending an academic year that's broken up into 3 quarters or 2 semesters, what most lenders will do is we go through the financial aid office and request a disbursement schedule. Because as you know, when you are billed by your institution, you're billed either by quarter or by semester. You're not billed for the full year. So the theory is if you borrowed, let's say, $30,000 over the course of your academic year, it's probably in your best interest that I don't give you all of the $30,000 up front, because then I'd be charging you interest on some unused portions because it's already dispersed. So what we do is we work with the school and say, okay, how much does this person really need right now? And most schools will give us a disbursement schedule. So for example, if you were attending a quarter school, that school will tell me, give this person 10 in the first quarter, 10 in the second, and the final 10 on the third. And by doing so, you're only getting charged interest on the portion that we dispersed. By that matter, if you are in a semester-based school, your school will typically tell me to disperse $15,000 of that original $30,000 example in the fall, and the remaining $15,000 in the spring. And that is to your best advantage, because I only charge interest on what is dispersed. So hopefully that answers the question.
Great, great. That's great. I have a question from Christine again. What does SoFi disperse loans to schools directly or to the student?
We disperse it directly to the bursar's office. So what we do is we either cut checks or send wires, depending on the school's preference, directly to the school for credit or benefit to the student's account. Now, in most situations, when the school receives our funds, the student may have already paid a lot of it, and so that creates an overage in their accounts. And typically, if the student has an arrangement with the school where they transfer the overage to their checking accounts, that transaction automatically occurs. Some students simply go to the bursar's office and collect the extra amount because typically that extra amount pays for their living expenses.
Great, that's good to know. And these are fantastic questions, so definitely keep them coming. So we actually have a question from Ellen. What if I'm the only person getting a loan from my school? Does it matter if I go to Stanford or Wisconsin? How can you give me the same rates that a Wisconsin person would get as a Stanford person? I'd assume Stanford default is lower. Thanks again, and he loves University of Wisconsin.
Well, if you're an eligible institution, we've already vetted out the fact that the rate works for you. So we also know that the alumni at these respective institutions are willing to take risks on the students at their alma mater. Therefore, our rate is the same right now because that story works both for Stanford and for University of Wisconsin alumni. Effectively, I don't think, number one, University of Wisconsin is an eligible institution. I have to remember that. Let me just check here. Well, anyway, the thing to remember is if you're an eligible institution, you're getting our current rate because we've already vetted out the economics of it for our alumni. So in the future, we might have different rates. But right now, it's one rate.
Great, thank you. Yes, so if there are any questions, definitely keep them coming. As you can tell, Walter is a great resource. So anything you have to ask him, please do. And actually, I just have a question maybe for myself. So does this the SoFi, because right now we're focusing a lot of MBA programs, but does this also apply to other graduate programs too, and what you've discussed today?
Absolutely. If you're an undergrad at one of our eligible institutions, you are able to take out a SoFi private student loan. We will be expanding the program. It's a consideration we've been taking into account for quite some time now, and do check our website as we continue that expansion.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So what about a law school or med school?
Law school and med school is something we've been thinking about. We're not ready yet, but I believe we will be ready soon.
Perfect, great. Also, Christine asked, Forbes gives an average of 3.5 years to repay MBA loans for top programs. Do you find that accurate?
Well, our portfolio is fairly new, so we haven't really, it's not aged enough to come up with a determination of what the average repayment is for a typical MBA student. Anecdotally, I believe MBA students pay their loans off faster. Just looking at all the payments I've been receiving on the loans I've made. For example, a lot of my borrowers have been sending in their bonuses as a prepayment. So anecdotally, the evidence is there that MBA students pay these loans off faster. So hopefully, as our company's history grows, we'll be able to develop better metrics on what the payment pattern is for MBA students. I mean, haven't been around for 20 years. I mean, MBA students always pay their loans. I mean, I've yet to run across a delinquent MBA borrower, even back in the 80s when there was such a program called the MBA student loan. It was a highly sought-after demographic, primarily because the anecdotal evidence suggests that, number one, you folks make a lot of money eventually, and the nature of the program is that you're pretty savvy about your financial histories. So.
Got it. Got it. It's definitely good to know. Um, so we have about 9 more minutes that we'll be able to address questions. So if you have any questions, definitely pass them by Walter as well. Um, I mean, in the meantime, also, Walter, is there anything else that you think that the attendees and people who will be viewing this recording ought to know, either about SoFi or about the program and loans in general? Is there anything else you can contribute or think about might be beneficial?
I mean, my recommendation to anyone seeking financing is always exhaust your lowest cost option first, regardless of who it is, whether it be a federal government option or a private student loan option. Exhaust your lowest cost option first. I always recommend, and I believe this sincerely, complete the FAFSA. I know it's pain, and most of you will not get anything, but it is the gateway to a lot of opportunities. In fact, you'll be surprised that whether it be school-based funding or foundation-based funding, a lot of them will ask for whether you have completed the FAFSA. So always start there. It becomes easier after the first year, but start there.
Gotcha. That definitely is helpful. So we actually also, Christine had a question. Any advice for getting noticed for scholarships?
For scholarships, the first thing I would do is go to your department head. They typically have the most access to the latest foundation grant information. At least when I used to be a financial aid administrator, which was a long time ago, but I still communicate with a bunch of them. The financial aid office is not normally the place to go for a lot of scholarship information. They receive it, they receive the checks, but most of them don't aggregate this information. A lot of this is clearly something the consumer has to do. And what I have found is your department head, whether you be an MBA student or an undergraduate, that department usually knows where the free money is because they're the more connected by nature of the fact that they're in the program. So that's what I would recommend. You start with whoever your department head is, the dean of the business school. They have separate endowment offices that they're fully aware of. And the next best thing is the alumni house. If your school has an alumni house, they're usually a good source of alumni-based scholarships.
Great. That's very helpful I'm sure for everybody as well. So we have, if you like to, Walter, if you start winding down, because we have a few more minutes, and then hopefully if any questions come up, I'll definitely present them as well.
Awesome. I mean, at the end of the day, I do want to highlight the fact that the SoFi student loan program is a very unique program. We believe we offer the best of both the federal programs and the private loan industry. And we will continue to evolve this product where at the heart of it, it benefits the consumer. The community we build, we believe, will help us stand out down the road and provides the best exposure opportunities for our borrowers, especially to opportunities that allow them to thrive, network, and find mentors that will guide them through their future careers. So please consider us. I think you'll find us a good match for your financing needs.
Perfect. Well, thank you. And I definitely am seeing thanks coming across the chat box or the questions box. And also at Exec, I mean, it's great to be partnered and working with SoFi and to be able to bring to you this presentation, because it's a lot of information and definitely really, I think, applicable to everybody in this position right now. And also, we have a question that came in. So if for example, somebody has a question about question in the future, who should he or she contact?
Oh, definitely. The person can reach out to me. My email is wbalmas. That's W, B as in boy, A as in apple, L as in Larry, M as in Mr., A as in apple, S as in Sam, at SoFi.org. I'd be happy to answer questions via email.
Perfect. And actually, I just sent to everybody in the chat box the email address right now, so you can have
Perfect.
it as well, so you can see it in your chat box. wbalmas@sofi.org. And on behalf of Ivy Exec, I would definitely like to thank everybody for coming tonight and for asking really, really great questions. You got to the heart of the problem, and those were really great questions. So definitely appreciate your involvement. And Walter, thank you so much for giving a great presentation as well.
My pleasure. And I wish everyone good luck in their studies. And thank you, the folks at Ivy Exec.